Hello, this is a reply to this video. I'll put the link in, called The Spiritual Nature of Photons, but really more of a reply to Thou Art That, who gave me the link to this. Now, I didn't really care for it, Thou Art That, just to be straight up front. I don't know who this guy is. I don't know if he was trying to dumb his language down for people or whatever. It's out of context. It's 2 minutes and 48 seconds, and that's all I'm going from. And so I'm just going to play it through and say what I thought. Of course, I appreciate you giving the link. Definitely worthy food of thought. Um, it was succinct and so that's all good. But well, let's go.
Everything hangs on the photon. The photon is this unit of action that cannot be subdivided.
Now, why does he say that? Right away, I was like, why does he say that? Because I think it can be subdivided, because a photon can be absorbed by an atom and re-emitted as different, two different photons that add up to the same energy. It's the same energy. That is that photon absorbed as energy, or it can be absorbed, some of it, and reflected other parts of it. Various things can happen.
You don't have 1.5 actions.
Which is why this is really a bad, I think, metaphor to use, but
it's just like human action or human.
Because, see, in human action, what you have is an arbitrary threshold. He's about to say,
and you can't lean out a window 1.5 times.
Now, who decides when you've actually leaned out of it? When you begin, or do you have to break the plane? What if you're just standing too far back from the window and you lean out, and it's when you break the plane of the, that's arbitrary. You're just deciding to call it. There's no fundamental difference between where you're leaning per se. I mean, why not do it where your eye is at, where you can actually, why not do it where you're actually, maybe can potentially fall? I mean, what is leaning out of a window actually mean? Do you have to bend your waist?
That it comes in whole units or quanta. And these quanta are very universal in their function.
Now that's interesting, because I think he's really just saying they're ubiquitous. I don't know what he means by universal, but he's just saying that they're ubiquitous. There's photons out there, but he's about to make, I think, an error.
Everything that happens between these particles that we talk about, billiard balls, atoms, what have you, everything that happens between them is in the form of photons or light.
Nope.
It's not just communication.
Nope. Bosons. There's bosons. And there's 3 different kinds of bosons. A photon is just one sort of boson. The bosons are the force-carrying particles, and the photon is just the one for electromagnetic field. And he's thinking of bosons. And it is kind of interesting that you have these force-carrying particles, and they're photon-like, but nope, they're not photons. It's a little bit sloppy, I think, on the science. Now, if he knows better, then I don't really approve of talking down that much. But if he doesn't know better, then that's why he said that.
Of one atom to another, or one molecule to another. It's the creation of particles themselves. And that's part of the physics. I don't want to burden you with it. But what's called pair creation is when a photon creates a particle. So to sum it up, the photon has a very primary role. Now, why is it spiritual?
Now, why is it spiritual? Well, before he says, see, I want to go to what I've been saying is spiritual, which spiritual experiences. I had one recently, actually. And it's really any experience that gives you that feeling that we think of as spiritual. And it's hard to define or describe. It's sort of, you have no other word for it. Maybe it's just a grab bag, and there's all kinds of experiences in there. Oh yeah, I think that's true. And but the feeling of wonder and the interest that it draws, these are experiences that will stand out in our mind on their own. Just biochemically, we will remember these experiences. So yes, you can have a spiritual experience just thinking about photons, about how strange it is in bosons and force carrying and quantum mechanics and relativity. These things can trigger that feeling of wonder and connection with the universe.
It's
That's not what he's going to say.
spiritual because it has none of the properties that matter possesses.
So wrong. If he just said it, those particles are energy. It's just more energy. So of course, since it's so much more energy, and your average particle bouncing around in the universe, there's more energy than in your average photon. So of course they show different, behaviors because it's enough energy to be bound as a mass-bearing particle. But okay, what are they? Are they dislike? He's about to go through 4 things, I think it is.
It doesn't have mass.
Now that's very interesting because that's a matter of semantics mostly in science, okay? Because it depends on what you're calling mass. If you want to insist that mass is what you have when the energy becomes what we traditionally think of mass of particles like the elements, then you're just defining this threshold. But in the sense that mass decomposes to energy, then obviously mass, the behavior of mass, is just the behavior of energy when there's a lot of it trapped up in this traditionally material kind of substancey type thing. But it's not really a substance, it's a system of energy. We know that it's a system of energy bound up. But it has the behavior of what we call like mass. Now, does light actually have mass? Well, E equals mc squared, so it does have an equivalent mass, right? We know that, and it's bent in gravitational field, and in fact, it falls like any other particle would. But if you fire a gun and a laser at the same moment, the photons from the laser will be, dropping, being pulled towards the Earth, the same vertical rate towards the center of the Earth as the bullet. And the light's going so fast it'll only curve, but it is affected by gravitation, and it has an equivalent mass. So that's good enough for me. It just doesn't have that quality of what we consider traditional mass. And if enough of the energy comes together, it can create mass. So the property of mass obviously comes from the energy. At one time, everything in the universe was energy. Or that's the theory anyway.
It doesn't have charge.
Okay, but so what? Neither do neutrons. So what?
It doesn't have position.
Now, it does have position. It doesn't have a deterministic position. The position is a bit blurry, but it does have a position. The wave packet is contained in a particular kind of shape that could be said to have a position. You have to choose, like, what do you mean by the position? Well, it's an interval. It's within this particular area.
It doesn't have time. It's outside of
Time.
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 Clocks stop at the speed of light.
No, that's wrong. You can't assume that. It's kind of like this, okay? Einstein did not say clocks actually stop. It's interesting because what happens is as something goes faster and faster away from the Earth, say, time continues to seem to flow at the same rate. But to us, it would seem that time was slowing on this let's say, spaceship traveling really close to the speed of light. And the closer it got to the speed of light, the more it would slow. But Einstein said you could never reach the speed of light because the theory requires that we take an infinite amount of energy. Okay, how would you get an infinite amount of energy? Well, light doesn't seem to take an infinite amount of energy. It's not really obeying that law, and it's going the speed of light. And you can't assume that time has stopped for it for a couple reasons. And one, you have to remember that in this other example, time continues to seem to flow. So that's an assumption that should cause you to pause. But more importantly than that, think of this analogy. When you divide a number by a smaller and smaller number, the answer approaches infinity. But that doesn't mean you can just say, well, the smallest number is going to be 0, so if you divide by 0, it'll be infinity. No, that's not how those series works. That intuition is false. So we can't say that time stops. And also, we don't necessarily know what that means, because it also means that all of time happens at once. So it's what implies this four-dimensional structure, but we can't actually say time stops. We don't understand the rest frame of light.
Has no position. You couldn't possibly locate it. I think the most interesting thing of all about the photon is that only one person can see it.